Have you ever been to church before? If you haven't, there are probably a few things that might be a little bit strange to you that happen during most church services. And if you have been to church, maybe you'll realize how strange some of the stuff we do in church might seem to someone who's never been. Most church services start by worshiping God. Now, there are many ways to worship God, and it's not just through singing that we worship God. We're supposed to worship God with our lives. But in church, worship normally means singing. So you do that first, most of the time. During this, the main singer dude is called the worship leader. And sometimes in between songs, this worship leader will just start talking to no one in particular. May seem weird at first, but he's actually just praying. So depending on which church you go to, worship could look like this. Or like this. And don't worry if you don't know the song, there are normally words on big screens that will tell you what to sing. Oh yeah, and if you see people raising their hands during worship, don't freak out, it's normal. I mean, people do that all the time at concerts, right? Then after you sing a song or two comes normally the announcements. Announcements basically just keep you updated on what's going on in the church, and you can find a lot of these announcements normally in your bulletin, which you should have gotten handed when you walked in by the greeters who greeted you. Then after announcements comes the fellowship time. This is basically 3 to 5 minutes where you basically just make small talk with people nearby. Yeah, it's pretty much an introvert's nightmare. Then the pastor comes up and gives his message. Now if you don't want to take notes, don't worry, there's a place to take notes in the bulletin. Usually it's just fill in the blanks and they make the answer pretty obvious, so you don't have to worry about that too much. And finally, Jesus loves you. Jesus loves you. And if you want to take more detailed notes, there's normally space for that too. Or just doodling. Of course, you can't forget the offering, and no, we will not be slaughtering any lambs, or cows, or chickens, or doves, or... Now, the pastor will probably explain this, but if you get past a bucket of money, it's not for you. Just pass it right along. But you could drop off your connection card. Pretty much every church has a connection card, and you can normally find it on the back side of the pew or chair in front of you. You can fill it out with all your information, and then you can connect with the church. And then sometimes they do this thing called communion. Again, the pastor will probably explain this beforehand, what it is, what it means, etc. So again, if you weren't paying attention and you find yourself being passed grape juice and crackers, they're not a snack. Basically, when we do communion, we remember what Jesus did on the cross to take away the sins of the world. The bread or crackers represents his body, and the grape juice represents his blood. Then we eat the bread. Cannibalism? No. And drink the juice. Vampireism? Really? If you're not a Christian, just let them pass. So if you've grown up in church culture, what other things can you think of that people who haven't grown up in church culture might think is weird? Also, if you didn't grow up in the Bible Belt, so to speak, and then went to a church service, what did you think was strange or weird about it? That's all for today. I'll see you next week. Goodbye.